Here we go. Welcome, Living North Phoenix, back to our podcast and our Living North Phoenix podcast. Super excited about today's podcast. We have on our first guest since we've started our podcast. And as I'd like to let everyone know, our podcast is sponsored by Copper State Contracting as well as Copper Sky Roofing. Those guys are awesome at both of those companies. So if you need anything moving related or relating to your house with a project, please reach out to them. They're awesome. So with our podcast today, we have our guest is Todd Lingel, who I'm very excited about having. So Todd, thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, Blair. I appreciate that, especially being your first guest. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's super exciting for us as well. So I remember when I started our Facebook group years ago and had our first like in-person Facebook Live, how cool those were. So this is the new thing, and podcasts are great. Um, so I want to let everyone know. So a couple of weeks ago, I think maybe a month ago even, there were some different posts in the group about, what we should talk about, who we should have on. And Todd had reached out, and we started chatting after that, and I thought that it would be a good fit for us to bring more awareness to the community about your foundation. So without further ado, let everyone know, obviously you've introduced yourself, but let everyone know about what the foundation is, what you guys are looking to do, what you have done, and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, sounds great. So my foundation is called Kares Foundation. My mom and my sister were killed by a drunk driver when I was 3 years old. And so the Kares is spelled Kares. My mom's name was Karen. That's where the Kare comes from. And Shelly was my sister. That's where the S comes from. And if you go on our website is ks-cares with a K.org. You can actually see the logo, and the one leg of the K wraps around the other leg, and that is significant to the fact that here a few years ago, when I started this up, I was able to find the first responder to my mom's wreck.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, from 1975. I was 3 years old. I'm 52 now. And so I had a chance to talk with her, and she told me about the scene when she came up on the scene. And I'll just tell you a little bit about that, and I'll kind of go back about what we do. So, when talking with her, it was emotional for me, for one, because I was 3 years old. And I didn't know exactly what happened, and we'd come up on the scene, my dad and I, because my mom hadn't shown up to my grandmother's place. It was a day before Father's Day in 1975, and my mom was taking my brother and my sister to my grandmother's house. My sister wanted to bake pie crust with my grandmother, and my brother was going to a 4-H meeting. So, spending time with grandma. So, and this was in Idaho. And so my mom had taken off. And of course, back then you didn't have cell phones and that's and such. And so I stayed home with my dad, and my dad was breaking a horse. And so eventually, I guess my dad heard the phone and answered it. And my grandmother said that, they hadn't shown up. So my dad put me in the Jeep. This was what he tells me. And we went to the scene. And so we drove up on the scene about 3 or 4 miles out of town. My dad knew it was our car. He got out and started running toward the car. And one of his buddies was one of the deputies there and tackled him and said, "Hey, Karen and Shelly are gone." But my brother was on the way to the hospital because my brother was, of course, in the back seat. And so my dad said, all he remembers from that point is collapsing on the pavement. And another officer from a neighboring town was there and drove us, I guess, to the hospital. And even to this day, my dad doesn't remember how the Jeep we were driving got home. So it was just a miracle that I was able to run into this first responder. Because when I started this up, I wanted to start speaking in a location where my people knew my mom and sister when they were still alive, and that was a church that I grew up in. And so I was talking to the minister, and that's how it kind of came about. I don't, as I remember is talking to him about it, and then all of a sudden we're like, really, that could be? But we figured out that it's his wife's grandmother was a first responder. And so my first question was, is she still alive? Of course. So then, yes, she is, and I was able to spend time with her. So now I'll fast forward to when she came on the scene. She said that when she got there, that there was an older lady there that must have been trained in 4-H first aid because she had gauze on everybody except for of course, my mom, my sister. but my brother's arm was broken, she said, obviously, and wrapped up, and he was bleeding from the head. And then the drunk driver had gotten cut from his shoulder all the way to his groin, and he was covered in gauze. And she goes, it was obvious that your mom and your sister had passed. And I said, okay. I said, well, will you tell me about them, how they were? Because I said, I said this is kind of a weird word, I guess, but closure. Maybe I get to know my mom and sister's final moments. And so she said when they hit, he was driving an F-150 and my mom was in a 66 Chevelle Super Sport, and they hit driver to driver head on. And
Uh,
it popped the hood back through the windshield of the car. And back then, kids stood up in the front seat. They didn't have the booster seats and all that. And my sister, the hood took her right above in the forehead area and killed her instantly. And she said that my sister that had pushed my sister back in the seat like you normally sit. And my mom was leaning over my sister like she was giving her a hug. And I'm like, you know what? That makes sense because my mom's death certificate says she died moments after impact. So I think she had enough life in her to see that my sister had passed and was leaning over to give my sister a hug, and that's how she passed. So if you go on the website, and like I was saying, the one part of the K wraps around the other part of the leg of the K, that's the significance of my mom hugging my sister.
wow.
And so, I've wanted to do this for years, and I've spoke off and on for kids that knew my story. I'd go speak at driver's training class, or I'd speak at a victim impact panel. And when I got started with this, the whole focus is to save lives and help kids. So a couple things we focus on. One is I go all across the country speaking about my story and testimony. Because at one point in my life, I almost committed suicide with having to go through everything, and I can talk more about that here in a little bit. But so I go across the country. The second thing we have is called Camp Cares, and it's with a K. And June 6th through the 13th of this next year, we're going to have a camp up out of Globe, Arizona, the Elks Camp up there. And it's for 75 kids who have been affected by drugs or alcohol. And we're going to have like a group counseling in the morning and a group counseling in the afternoon. And our theme is Survivor, like the TV show Survivor. So we're going to have a good time. The cabins are going to have their own like name of their little group, and have some different competitions. Have a good time. Uh, and some other friends of mine are going to be up there, and I've got even a rapper that's coming up there to do some rapping, and just could have a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah.
And so just give these kids some tools to better help them in life. And then once we're done up there, coming back in the valley, um, I want to get together with these kids every quarter, check in with them. Hey, how are you guys doing? That type of thing. Maybe give them some more tools. And so building this relationship in the hopes that they'll go out and help their peers. That's what we're trying to develop. And the goal for CARES is to have one of these camps in all 50 states.
Wow.
So that's the big goal.
So,
And
so the only, I don't mean only like negative, but is the only one in Arizona then, or do you have one in Idaho too?
I have not started. This is the very first one this
Got it.
summer.
Okay.
There are plans. I've already been talking about Oregon and Idaho. I grew up in Idaho and I lived in Oregon for years. And a friend of mine, her name's Nan. She has been a camp director for 20 plus years at camps over there. So she's going to be directing the camp. So
That's
that's
phenomenal.
why Oregon's the next one.
Yeah.
And we're gonna. It's just exciting that we get to help kids this way. The other thing that's kind of two of the things that we do, and then the other thing that I'm trying to focus on and go to is group homes here in the valley. And I've been to like four, I think, group homes speaking to them. And the great thing about the group homes, and I tell these kids that, the stigma of, oh, I live in a group home kind of thing. I said, here's the advantage to that. You've already been through a lot of things in life that stink, and you can make that choice now going forward on to make it a great life. You have that choice. And I said, kids that are still in school and have their parents and all that, they probably haven't experienced what life is really about yet. And so I try to go out to these kids and talk with them and build relationships. And the key thing, I mean, with any nonprofit, you have to raise funds, and the group homes don't have any funding to pay for somebody to come in. So I do this just because we are CARES Foundation, and that's what we're about. So that's kind of what we do, what we're about. I guess the portion, and I'll just kind of go on about my life as far as growing up, if you would like me to.
I want to hear that. Let's get to that in a little bit if we can. I had a couple
Okay.
questions before I forget. The first question is your brother still alive?
He is still alive, yeah, and flourishing very well. Yeah,
You were cutting out there just a little bit.
it has taken. Yeah, yes, he is alive. Yeah, and doing very well.
Good. And
And he still has some trauma from it, but he's doing well.
what's the age difference between the two of you?
6 years.
Hmm.
Yeah, my brother was 9, my sister was 6, and I was 3 during that at the time.
Does he, and I'm sorry, you might have said this, does he remember it happening?
Yeah, he does. As much as he will talk about it. Um, I know one time we talked that he sometimes can still smell the blood from the wreck. So it's been definitely uh, big for him, and he doesn't talk about it very much because it still hurts, and my dad's kind of the same way. Um, and with me doing this, it's opened my dad up to actually talk to me more, which
Hmm.
has been great. And in 2012, he told us when we were younger that he kept some of my mom's stuff in like a trunk, but he never ever took it out because I think it was too hard to talk about it. And in 2012, um, I had a ankle blowout and I had to live with them, my dad and stepmom, for a little while. And he brought out that trunk and he gave me one of the best gifts ever in life. And he pulled my mom's purse out
Wow.
that she had with her when she passed. And is all he did was cleaned it up and left everything inside like it was. And man, and I've taken stuff out and looked at it, but I've never taken everything completely out except for about 2 months ago. I finally did. And it's amazing what was in there. And I bring this with me too and show kids. So that was an amazing gift for me.
I bet. What a horrible traumatic experience. I mean, for any person at any age, but especially, with what you guys have had to deal with. And it doesn't there's no words for it. I mean, there's so many things that are associated with it that happen that are so traumatic and so awful. If you don't mind sharing, walk us through the things that you've done to, you mentioned that you almost committed suicide or tried to commit suicide. Walk us through some of the things that you've dealt with to ensure that that didn't happen. And I'm asking that also because I've had moments in my life where I've had similar type things because of different reasons. But walk us through as a community the things that you've done to try to help yourself through those times.
Absolutely. So I'll kind of give you a little precursor. Growing up when my mom passed, after that, it was back in 75. So you were uh, basically deemed a weirdo if you went to counseling or anything like that. And so it was the old adage of buck up, buttercup. And so that's kind of what you did. They just locked them up and we moved on. Well, my grandmother on my mother's side, I ended up seeing her once a year. My uncle lived 15 minutes from us. I saw him maybe once every couple of years. And so growing up, I always felt like there was something different about me. I didn't know what it was. And I was one of the best football players in the state of Idaho at that time. And still, I just was something was wrong. And it started hitting me when I got a divorce in my mid 30s. I got depressed and just went through a lot of things and everything just kind of piled up on me. So to answer your question, what I did, I think the first thing is to acknowledge that I had a problem, that I needed help. That was the first thing. And the second thing is I talked to my doctor, and she put me on medication. And that kind of made me a little worse. And that's when I almost committed suicide. And I called the doctor on call and said, "Hey, I'm done with this." And went and talked with her. And I said, I said, I've grown up in a non-denominational Christian church all my life. I believe in God. I want to go to a Christian counselor. And between the Christian counselor, God, and myself, we're going to figure out what this is. And so I went through 4 years of counseling. And you have to, when you're at that point that you have acknowledged that you need the help, moving forward to get the counseling or talk to a friend to help you get counseling, then going through the counseling, no, it's going to be work. I went back to when I was 3 years old, and I had the opportunity to mourn my mom and my sister's death that I never ever had ever done. And so I went through the 7 stages of grief and just talked about things, and it took a long time. And so we figured out what that feeling that I was always feeling growing up was general anxiety and separation anxiety. And so when I realized that, I thought back to when I was a kid, and my brother, of course, is 6 years older than me, like we said, and he would go on like a swing choir trip. He is on a choir that they'd travel around once in a while. And when he would leave, I'd have problems. I would cry. I wouldn't want to be around him. And so it made perfect sense. And and then also when I'd have like a good time with somebody and I would leave, like I have a great weekend or whatever, and I'd leave, I'd cry when I'd leave for a little while and then I'd be good. And so that all completely made sense of what had happened in my life. And so through that 4 years, I learned how to deal with my anxiety, both parts of the anxiety. And to this day, my counselor said, you'll probably never ever get rid of your anxiety because it happened at such a young age. And I'm like, okay. So I learned to deal with it. And when it comes up, I can feel it usually when it comes up. And it's like, okay, I self-talk. It's gonna be okay. Do the breathing exercises, deep breathing and talking. I go for a drive. Driving relaxes me. So I will do those types of things. And there's some days that, you know what? And it happens usually a couple times a year that, yeah, it's got me today. It's okay. Everything's gonna be okay. And I'll do that. I'll go for a drive and just kind of be alone, or I'll get together with some people and I'll get through it and it's okay. And acknowledging that and then saying that it's gonna be okay was probably the hardest thing that I had to acknowledge, I guess, for myself was that. But I can't thank, my dad and my grandmother at the time. If it wasn't for them, I would never have gotten through all of this.
Hmm.
So, and yeah.
Hmm. Well, thank you for sharing that, and hopefully there's at least someone out there who hears that who's dealing with something. I don't want to say similar, but having similar type issues that can get something from it to make it through. A couple questions came up from that. So you mentioned that driving gives you relaxes you. It
Uh-huh.
I hear that, and it's fascinating to me because um you've had this experience in your family where there were two people that were extremely close to you that had their lives taken while doing the act of driving, yet it's the same act that relaxes you. I'm guessing, and I know this is just audio for those listening, but we're on a Zoom. I can see your face, you're nodding. Walk me through that because that's really quite fascinating to me.
Well, it all started with my dad. When I was in Idaho when back then, and you could start driving at 14 years old. And then you could drive during the daytime and then at nighttime at 16, which we drove at nighttime anyway at 14.
Sure.
All of our friends' dads were the police officers. So, if they stopped you, like, you shouldn't be out here, you know that. Oh yeah, I know, I'm sorry. And that'd be it. Uh,
Right.
and so my dad always said, when you get in the car, this is something that can hurt somebody. Take it seriously and take it as a relaxing time, enjoying the driving. Don't be upset when you get in the car. If you're upset, don't get in a car because then you're not focused on your driving. So I took that to heart, and my dad always said I had a '66 Mustang growing up, and my dad always said if I catch you burning rubber, I'm gonna take your keys away for 2 weeks. And so and I grew up on a dairy and farm, and we had our milk barn like a couple miles away, and there was a couple times that my dad drove my car. Sorry, I'm going on a tangent here, but I kept seeing black marks around this corner going onto the highway, and I'm like, so I asked my dad. I said, "What are those black marks?" He kind of looks at me like, uh, you know, "Oh, I burnt rubber." I'm like, "Give me my keys, my spare keys. You don't get them for a month."
That's great. Mm,
So, so that's kind of where it came from. And so when I get in a vehicle, it's like I can zone everything out and I can just drive and enjoy the scenery. So I can literally, when I take off for a trip or whatever, I can drive 12 to 14 hours in a day.
mm.
And just, it's just relaxing to me. I don't know. I guess I'm one of those weird people, but that's what my dad instilled in me that way. But yeah, that's one way I relax.
Yeah, I for one would not call that weird at all. I mean, I know that might be a stigma or whatever, but
Yeah.
so a couple other questions from that, and not, whatever happened to the person that was the drunk driver?
Yeah, he actually passed away. My brother and I were trying to get his name when we were younger because we wanted to go visit him, and thank goodness nobody gave his name. He passed away. My uncle, I think, called me. I think it was my junior year of high school, if I remember right, somewhere in there, that he passed away from alcohol poisoning. And so I've actually started to try to research him more and find out what his past was like. And I've forgiven him a long, long time ago. At first, I did. I mean, I said I forgave him, but I really didn't in my heart until I went through the counseling and all that. And I'm like, you know what? I really need to forgive him. And honestly, I wished he was alive today so I could talk to him
Wow.
to see about his life. And as doing a little bit of research, he graduated from the same high school as my mom did, and he was 33 and my mom was 30. So of course, back then, when it happened, they didn't do anything to drunk drivers, even that killed people. Didn't do much about it. Oh yeah, he got 2 weeks in jail.
What?
Yeah, 2 weeks. He could serve it on. He didn't go to full 2 weeks of jail. He could serve it on evenings or weekends. And my dad told me he didn't do it the first 6 months, so they gave him another 6 months. And yeah, his job, he was driving trucks, 18 wheelers. And from the story I hear is that one point he was out somewhere driving on a route or whatever, and he was drunk, and somebody saw him and flattened his truck tires, and the company, they called the company, and the company fired him. So that's a story I've heard on that part. But yeah, he was 33, and I think, like I said, he was a senior when my mom was a freshman, I think, in high school.
Mm,
Kind of what I've been researching.
wow.
So. But
Uh,
yeah, who knows what his life was? He may not have had a good start in life and may have been just dealt that road that he chose to keep drinking, but who knows? So hopefully one day I find that out.
right. So going back to the driving relaxes you part, and what your dad had told you about, don't get in a car if you're mad. And not that what I'm about to say means whenever someone gets in their car, they are mad. And I
Mhm.
know this is focused around drunk driving, but what are your thoughts, while this might be obvious to the listeners, what are your thoughts on road rage? And then, especially here in Phoenix, in my opinion, we have a lot of wrong way drivers. Does that factor into your thinking at all, and your foundation and what you're trying to do, or is the foundation just around drunk drivers, or walk me through that?
Okay. I think road rage, man, it's a huge thing, I think, here in Arizona. Um, Too many people cutting people off, being, that way. If we just took it back and were a little kinder on the road, man, things would be so smooth and you wouldn't have any tie-ups when you're going anywhere. But that's all the different types of people in different areas of people. I think it's unique here because a lot of different people from a lot of different areas coming into Phoenix area, and so yeah, that's kind of crazy that way. But no, we don't just focus on the drinking and driving for Cares Foundation. When I go and talk to kids, I talk to things about kids that could trip them up in today's world, like peer pressure,
Hmm.
social media awareness, not knowing who they're talking to on the other side of their cell phone. Of course, the drinking and driving, my testimony, and then distracted driving. Those are one of the top four things that I will talk about to kids that say, you know what? I want it's okay to make mistakes. That's how we learn. But I want the kids not to make the mistakes that last a lifetime,
Mm.
like a felony or anything like that. So those are things I talk to the kids with, and then I talk with them. I don't talk at them. That's a big key for me. And I ask questions. And when I started this, I would ask, when is the first time you were asked or introduced into alcohol or drugs? It was always about 13 years old. Now it's slowly going down, and I've hit 11 multiple times. It's like, man, that is crazy. So this is a huge thing that's happening that I hope everybody can open their eyes and start helping these kids. Whether you have kids or not, there's always something you can do. And so I give every one of I have my cards, and I'll show you. I know we're on video here with us, but my personal cell phone number is on the back of my card. And I give every kid one of my cards, and I tell them to call me, because there's some parents out there that, they're so rigid that the kids would never ever probably call them if they're in trouble. And so I want these kids to call me, because I'll be the buffer between them and the parents, because I would rather do that than have a police officer come knock on their door saying, "Hey, I'm sorry, man, but your son or daughter is either dead or in jail." That's what I don't want. I don't want anybody to have to go through what I went through, because I mean, I one time tried to sit down and write how many people it's actually affected, and I had to stop because I was tired of writing names. It just goes and goes. You just don't have no clue who it really truly affects. Uh, and so, yeah, that's the driving force behind behind what I'm doing. I mean, uh, you know, I I work a job to help fund this right now, and I'm good with that because I'm helping kids doing that as well. And so, but this is where I want to be full time eventually, is just going around the country talking to people and helping kids.
That's truly amazing. Um, so the excuse me, the podcast that we've been doing so far have been like 20 to 30 minutes, which I know I'm coming up on, or we are coming up on.
Mhm.
I cut you off earlier from some stuff that you were going to talk about, and I want you to share that. I apologize for not remembering exactly what it was, but if you remember, please go ahead and let us know what that was about.
Trying to think of what what it was, or um, boy, I don't remember what that was.
Maybe relating to like when you were 12 and your life from then until now, maybe some other stuff. Does that no?
Well, I think, when I before I found out and figured out the counseling and all that, I really I could see how my life, because I've been married twice and divorced twice, and not all my fault, took two to tango, but I can see when I went to the counseling where my shortcomings were, because when they would go out, I would call and just see how they're doing. I wasn't controlling. I was really worried about them. And so and the part of the counseling too that helped, because even to this day, I have to really work on the fact that getting close to someone, I'm not afraid anymore, but I know it's there in my head that when I get to a certain point in building a relationship with someone, there's that point where it goes further to where you like love them as a friend or whatever, and you're afraid. And so in my head, it goes like, man, I'm afraid something's gonna happen to him. So what I'll do is I'll back out. I'll back up from that relationship a little bit. That's what I've been done in the past.
Mhm.
I don't do that now because I recognize that that's what it is through the counseling. So I think this whole thing, Cares Foundation, for not only myself, but for others, is recognizing where we're at and then being able to move forward. And that's a huge key. I mean, this has helped me out as much as I've helped other kids out.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, one thing we are going to do, and I know people can't see this, but we're doing a nickel pledge, and I'm getting some. I've been making actual real nickels, and I'll show you here, but drilling a hole through a nickel. And so the nickel pledge basically is this: is will not I will not drive drunk, distracted, or high, nor will I allow anyone around me to. I pledge to call for help if I'm in trouble. Let's see, what was that? I'm wearing this proudly in honor of those that have passed. And so that's what the nickel is for. And like I said, I've been drilling them myself, and it takes a long time to do like 40 or 50 of them. And so I'm going to start moving these to wood. And this is what it kind of looks like. And I know people
Wow,
can't see here. And in the back of it has the actual pledge on the back. And this is going to be made, this is a bigger one. It's going to be made about the size of a 50-cent piece. It's going to be made in a keychain. And then these small ones here have it on it, and it's about the size of a quarter. And we're going to make these into a necklace, and I'm going to give it away to kids. And then if an adult wants it, we're going to ask for a suggested donation of $10 for the small one, a suggested donation for 15 for the bigger one, keychain, and to help us raise funds for Kares Foundation. So that's something that's exciting that I get to share with kids. And it's funny. I was on a phone call. Was it night before last? And I spoke at a camp in Oregon this last summer, and my friend that I told you was a camp director, she goes, there was one of the kids that I ran into, and she goes, he was wearing his nickel pledge. I'm like, that's awesome.
that is awesome. Wow, this has been amazing, and the story behind it is just incredible, and not something easy to deal with, go through, handle. But you've done a great job with it, and arguably most importantly now finding a way to give back to help others on other levels, as you mentioned, whether just issues with social media. It's just about helping kids in general. That's fabulous. And again, because this is just the recording that's going to be heard, which will be shared in Living North Phoenix and on other socials and stuff. Let people again know how they can get a hold of you, the website. Please mention those nickels again, and what and the wood pieces, and what people can do. I know you just mentioned it, but I also want, if there's a way you can send me some images so I can share them in the different posts, because those are beautiful, both the message and what they look like. Please let everyone know again, contact info, all that stuff.
Okay. So again, my name is Todd Lingel with Kares Foundation. Now it's with a K, Kares, and then Foundation. I will just reiterate, there is another Kares Foundation that's not related to us. And so just make sure you're on the right website. But the website is ks-kares.org. So that's ks-cares with a K.org. And you can go on the website there if you want to donate. We are a 501c3, so everything is tax deductible. Um, and our camp is called Camp Kares with a K, Kampkares. And here soon I'll have hopefully the website updated with updates on everything. And it's going to be June 6th through the 13th. So we're trying to raise funds for that. To sponsor a child, it's $300 to sponsor a child to go to the camp. And then we have the nickel pledge, which the nickel pledge, like I was saying, I'll read it again here. I will not drive drunk, distracted or high, nor will I allow anyone around me to. I pledge to call for help if I'm in trouble. I'm wearing this proudly in honor of those that have passed. And there go wood, and kind of has on the front has Kares Foundation, and it kind of has the nickel kind of in the background. And the bigger one's going to be a keychain. And for a suggested donation of $15, we'll get this sent out. And then the smaller one is about the size of a quarter, and the same thing, just a smaller. And we will give this to adults for suggested donation of $10. And then we're handing out these free to kids that I speak with. And so that's a great cause. One other thing, and I know people can't see, I'll show you, Blair. So here's a backpack, and I can show you Blair on here, and it's really quality backpack. So what this backpack is for Camp Cares. So what my idea was, because like bowl games, football bowl games, the kids get a little goodie bag or whatever. That's what we want to do with these bags. And we're looking for a sponsor. I've already got them already the bags with my logo, and the camp logo and the logo of whoever sponsors them, will be on the bag. And for all those, it's like $24 a bag, and they're nice bags. And so I'm looking for a sponsor for $2,700, to sponsor those bags for all the kids and the volunteers that come up there. So that's kind of where we're at. What we do, the way we run is off of funding is donations. And if there's anybody that wants to volunteer, reach out to me. My cell phone number is, and I still have an Oregon number right now, it's 541-490-5171. So it's 541-490-5171. I am getting another number, and it should be here very shortly, and it's not quite up and running. It will be in a couple days. Um, and I don't have that memorized yet.
That's okay.
So
Awesome. Well, I know we're gonna get cut off here soon just because the Zoom timing on stuff, but I thank you so much for reaching out in the Facebook group and connecting and opening my eyes to what you're doing, and I applaud you for what you are doing. Those that know what Living North Phoenix is about, our tagline is celebrate community, support local. And what you're doing is exactly that on the community side, and we will do everything we can to support you. Hopefully, we find a sponsor for you or sponsors. People buying the nickels and doing the nickel pledges and all that stuff. This is amazing. I'm grateful that we're connected, and super grateful that we're able to let the community know more about this, so you can get more awareness, exposure, hopefully funding, because that obviously drives a whole bunch of stuff. But uh, th just thank you for everything you're doing. This has been very cool, and I appreciate you.
thank you, Blair. I appreciate you as well and having me on, especially be the first one. That's an honor. I really appreciate that. And thank you to all parents out there. Parents don't get enough thank yous. And you know, kids are awesome, and let's just keep them going.
For sure. Yeah, kids are awesome. Times are tough. Social media hasn't made it easier. Social media has its place, but it has not made the world an easier place to be in by any means, in my opinion.
Yeah,
But above all, again, thank you for being on. And hopefully, there's many people that are listening that will take steps to do something to help you guys out. So thanks for being here.
thank you, Blair.
Yeah, have an awesome day.
You too.
Take care.